The Nuggets face the number one defense in the NBA. They put up a 140 offensive rating. The bench is looking a lot better. Malone's decisions are starting to come in line with what the team needs. The vibes are not just immaculate, but unbelievable. There are questions that have to be asked about just how good this Nuggets team might be. This is Locked On Nuggets.
You are Locked On Nuggets, your daily Denver Nuggets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Nuggets, your daily Denver Nuggets podcast, part of the Locked On Network, your team every day. Thanks for making this your first listen. We appreciate you guys joining us on whatever platform that you are joining us on, whether it's Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Pocket Casts is a great app that I use, or on YouTube where you can join the show and join all sorts of folks that are hanging out with us on a Sunday night, heading into Monday. Optimism Monday indeed. And why not be optimistic as Adam Mares returns from parts unknown to join the show. Adam, welcome back. You haven't missed much except for the Nuggets kicking everyone's ass.
I didn't miss it, Matt. You know me. I was on vacation watching it. I will say I did miss the Minnesota game, though. I just was unable to be able to watch that one. But the other
didn't miss much there.
Didn't miss much. It is funny, though, when you are gone and don't see the game, so you don't see the emotion. Because I saw some people, I don't think the analysts, not you, not even DNVR, this or that, but I saw some people like, how could the team give this effort? And when you don't watch the game, so you don't see it, you're just like, well, it was the fifth game in 7 nights on the road. Like, I'm sure the effort just wasn't there for that reason. And Thursday and Friday proved to be the case.
And you know what's really kind of funny is Joker actually mentioned it. Like Joker mentioned this week about that game. He's like, you see what we're capable of some nights, and then you see games like Minnesota where we don't put in the work, and you see what happens.
Yeah.
I was like it was a little bit of like their realization of things, and Jamal talked a little bit about it too, about the flight back from Minnesota and just like their focus and resolve, which is really encouraging. But we'll start with recapping the last game, which is the win over the Cleveland Cavaliers. So the Nuggets get the win over the Cleveland Cavaliers on Friday night, 121-108. I thought that was going to be a trap game because I didn't think Darius Garland was going to play. Darius Garland did play, and it was honestly a really fantastic game. And it's all the more impressive to me that I thought it was a really good game, like tactically in terms of how
for sure.
the two sides were trying to match up. Without Donovan Mitchell, it's obviously a different deal for the Cavs. And the bigger deal was like without Donovan Mitchell, like they couldn't hang. The number one defense in the NBA. This is the best defense in the National Basketball Association. And at the point where Malone was putting guys in to sub, the offensive rating was 140, 100th percentile in the NBA. Like, I will tell you, I walked out of that game in awe of a team that I predicted before the season would finish with the best offense in the league and the best offense in NBA history. I was still awed by the number of impossible problems that they presented a very good Cavaliers team.
I mean, that was my takeaway too. I walked away from the game very impressed with the Cavaliers. Just they're so long. Like, it stood out to me how big they are as a team. I always talk about how much I think length is important. They were so long at every spot, and yet I was impressed with them, and Denver just made light work of them in the second half. To your point, it was a good game. Like, it was a very, yes, they were missing Donovan Mitchell, but I thought it was a well-played game from both teams. Mm-hmm. But Denver's well played turned out to be so much better than Cleveland's in the second half that it was a blowout win. And I mean, look, you pair that with the 42-point beatdown that they gave the Clippers. I know it didn't end up 40 points, but they were up 40 points when it mattered. You put that back to back and you just go, and then on top of that, 14 out of 17 or whatever it is, this Nuggets team is just coming together in a way. And Malone used the word today. And I think I used it on Twitter or something following that game. The Nuggets just look as connected as I've ever seen. And when you talk about solving problems, it's not solving problems as in, oh, this player is so good you can't solve them. It's they all collectively working together to solve whatever problem you present to them in any given possession. And to me, that's connected basketball, and that's what was so exciting about how they closed the game. They just looked like they were sharing a brain.
And what's great, so I want to build off of that with the defensive side, because they've talked a lot about how their communication is what's led to the improved defensive efforts. And you see that. And like, I asked Bruce Brown about some of this stuff, and he's like, we weren't even really communicating low man. So that's messing up our X outs. Like, he was explaining all that stuff in detail. And it was great. But like, offensively, I asked Malone, I was like, Jared Allen, in a lot of people's minds, is a defensive player of the year candidate. And, Joker cooked him. And I was like, what'd you kind of see from that matchup? And Malone was like, I have to be careful here because we're going to play him again. He was like, Joker just doesn't see defensive player of the year. He just sees the matchup and he's able to beat it. And it really was kind of that way, where the Cavs very much presented the problem as Jared Allen's going to be super physical with you. Jared Allen's going to challenge you. We're going to front you. And so then the Nuggets were hitting lobs. Okay, we're gonna play you straight up, and we're gonna try and challenge you, and you're gonna have to hit tough contested shots. Joker did that, and so then they were like, okay, now let's try doubling. Like, I will say, this is a key part if you're gonna play Nikola Jokic. You better not go down the logical thought process. Like, you better not be operating on a flow chart of, we're gonna try this, and if that doesn't work, we're gonna do that, because he's already ahead. Like, he knows. And so when Evan Mobley was like, all right, I'll come help. That's when Joker was like, now I'm finding Aaron Gordon. Now,
automatically.
Like, I mean, it's incredible. The impossibility of what Denver is producing right now. A lot of how I evaluate whether teams are a championship caliber is, are you solvable? Is there a weak point where I'm like, yeah, but they're going to do this to you, and I don't know if you have a counter.
Right.
I have that for Memphis. Okay. I have that for New Orleans. I have that to Phoenix to a degree right now because of the wing situation that they're under. Offensively, when the Nuggets have the ball and they are healthy, I do not know what you can do.
Yeah. And I'll say one piece of this that I think is almost underrated, as crazy as it sounds. We've thought in years past, Jokic hasn't been aggressive when he needed to. Like, he'll try to get everyone involved, and it's almost like on principle. And even in the last 2 years, he's been aggressive almost all the time because he's needed to be. This year, I think that is the best I've seen from him, especially over the last 2 weeks, where he knows when he needs to be aggressive and when not to. So it's not just a, hey, I'm going to set the table in the first quarter, and if we don't have it going, then I'll step up. It's almost that he's naturally just always, there is no ramp up or slow down. He's just always reading exactly what it is. And sometimes that means he scores 6 in a row. And sometimes that means he doesn't shoot for 5-6 possessions. But he just seems to be in the flow now where he's always the right level of aggressive.
We've talked about control over the game so much on this pod. I don't know if I've seen, and I use this word very hesitantly, but I don't know if I've seen anyone more in control of the game. Anyone. I don't know that anybody has. Because so much of the other players that would fit this description, it was dictated on a certain level of, because he's so physical, he has an advantage that will force a reaction. And with Joker, it's so read-centric. Yeah. Like, Jared Allen was like giving him a hard time in the post, and like and Jokic was getting angry at the at some of the post defense that like he felt that there were fouls, but Allen was doing a really good job, like trying to front him and stuff like that. You lob it over the top, and then it's a bucket. Okay, I got to play you straight out. Like, there's just, and with Casey, again, the fits on this team that we thought were great, but like Kentavious Caldwell-Pope has been so good. Like, and there's just the numbers. Now, look, I went over this weekend and I tweeted about him that the shooting numbers are like, I don't know how to contextualize it, because the numbers tell me that Denver is shooting from three in particular, probably a little unsustainably. But if you ask me based off of eye test, I'm just like, these are quality shooters that are getting the best looks imaginable. It's not just open. That's not, like, open shots are not always great shots. It's so in rhythm. Everyone.
This is my thing. I've been on this for years. It's the rhythm of the shots. The offensive rhythm is really good right now. It's at an all-time. I don't want to get ahead of ourselves. The offensive rhythm is really, really good, and I feel like this is part of why guys are making the shots that they are. And I'm with you. Like, some of the numbers are absurd, but like KCP is the guy that you look at. He's shooting like 46% or 47%. I don't know. Sometimes guys have years like that, right? Today, Michael Malone did say of KCP that he's played on some great teams, but he said even on those great teams, and he was referencing the Lakers championship team, they still would have to run a play for him every now and then. Like, if he wasn't in the flow of the offense, okay, we'll call the KCP play. He said, here, we don't call any KCP plays. It's just the ball finds him because the ball finds everybody in the offense. And I really do think that's how it is.
They do find the DHO, the ATO DHO into the mid-range jumper, top of the key for him.
Sure.
Like
but that's like a standard play. That play that you're talking about, you can get into that action 30 different ways. So you're right that sometimes they'll call that as the first option. But I think the truth of it is, one of the reasons you go to that option is because it's a mid-range pull-up. And I think defenses are willing to concede that on principle. Like, a KCP mid-range jumper is the best defensive outcome for a lot of teams.
Yeah.
And it's a great option.
Well, let's take a break. We're going to come back. We're going to talk about the bench and get Adam's thoughts on how the bench is playing currently. What there continues to be talk about potential trades and our thoughts on that idea, what the Nuggets need, if anything. We'll talk about all that and more when we come back on Locked On Nuggets. A little bit later, we're going to answer a question that's been asked several times in this chat section, which is, are they peaking too early? And I'll talk a little bit about what we absolutely, if this is the best that we've seen from the Nuggets. We'll do that when we come back on Locked On Nuggets. But first, I need to tell you about TurboTax. Go to TurboTax and don't do your taxes. Meet with an expert who will do them for you. TurboTax experts can relieve you from the stress of taxes and file for you so you can do not taxes. Show your eyes things that are not taxes. Unpack a moving box of not taxes. Taste not taxes. Sing not taxes a lullaby. Hope not taxes sleep through the night. Grab a saddle and ride not taxes into the sunset with a TurboTax 100% expert guarantee. An expert will do your taxes from start to finish so you can relax. Feels good to be done with your taxes, doesn't it? Come to TurboTax and don't do your taxes. Visit TurboTax.com to learn more. Intuit TurboTax. Full service products only. Video meeting while expert does your taxes required. See guarantee details at TurboTax.com/guarantees. We'll be right back on Locked On Nuggets. Back here on Locked On Nuggets. Thanks for joining us, making us part of your day. Appreciate you guys being with us and joining us on the live show if you're joining us. And if not, listening to us on a Monday morning, make sure to go to YouTube, subscribe, hit the notifications button so you can join the show. Best way to support the show is to join us on YouTube. If not, give us those 5-star reviews. Always love to see those. Potsy says, Adam, we missed you. You're so popular. You're Mr. Nugget. That's why I laugh when everyone talks about Mr. Nugget. You're Mr.
Yeah,
Nugget.
right, man. Yeah, right.
All right, so let's talk about the bench, which has been absolutely phenomenal. Thought it was really cool to see how the Cavaliers game played out, right? Because I actually thought like Zeke played really well in the first stint, but they were having problems on the offensive glass. And in the second half, Malone says, okay, go. And he talked about this, about how he spoke to DeAndre Jordan at shoot around and said, stay with me. Like, just, be ready. Don't check out. Like, I'm going to need you in certain spots.
Do you think that that's been real quick? I didn't see that comment. Do you feel like that's been a thing? I feel like DeAndre has been so good with not playing.
Yeah. I think that was probably DeAndre's message, which is, don't worry about it. I'm good. Like, when you need me, I'm there. I think like he gets it. Like, that's the thing is, Bones posted the photo about him. Like, he was in Bones's ear. Like, just everyone loves DeAndre Jordan. Like, he has been such a positive force in terms of the off-court stuff. And then he comes in and he plays really well in that stretch. And he gets he provides some rim protection and gets the rebounds and provides some physicality in a very, very specific matchup situation. So I thought it was like a good spot there. I also was relieved to hear Malone say after the game that when kind of asked about the idea of matching up based off of personnel, Malone gave a really interesting answer, which is he said, early in the season, I was trying that. We were trying to match up with what we thought was a good matchup for the other team. And we've talked about that there, about how Malone would try like counter programming a little bit. And it had very, very mixed to poor results. And instead here, he was like, no, that bench unit has done really good things. The Vlatko, Zeke, Bones unit has played really well over this last 10 games or so. Like that, and he kind of intimated like that's what we're going to be going forward. Like, that's the bench rotation. You know, I'll talk about Jeff Green, but like that's the bench rotation going forward. But if I need DeAndre, being able to count on him as a vet, like that's very good. And that's honestly how it should be. I don't have a name in the Western Conference where it's like they have a big man off the bench that's going to be a huge problem. I don't. Maybe the Los Angeles Lakers with Thomas Bryant. That's the only one I can really think of. We've talked about this a lot about how we're really only talking about 12 minutes at the start of the series, 10 minutes at the start of the series, actually more likely. And then by the end of it, you're talking 8 minutes in game 6 and maybe 4 minutes in game 7, right? If Jokic doesn't go the whole way. You're nodding your head. What do you think?
It's hard to know. I mean, we're getting that far ahead of ourselves with playoffs. I just don't know yet. I mean, I don't know, but it won't be very many. You're right that with Jokic, odds are he's going to try to play 40 minutes.
Someone that knows the team very well mentioned to me the other day that I want to kind of make a comment on this. One more thing on DeAndre, about how the difference in having DeAndre around versus, quote, some other players that were around last year,
DeMarcus Cousins,
has been very noticeable in terms of the impact and the messages that have gotten to players and the vibe that the bench has, and that's been very helpful. So like that's just something. Now look, I think everybody likes the vibes guy when you're winning games, but when you're not winning games, that's when you're like, we need production, we need, you know, impact, right? So that's part of the equation. Is like I'm not surprised that everyone keeps asking about Cousins, because like Cousins put up points and rebounds.
Well, he was impactful. The bench last year was also bad until he arrived. I mean, other things happened at that point, but he I think was a major positive plus minus influence on the team.
And so yeah, like the impact was there, and
clearly came at a cost though.
Yeah,
clearly.
Yeah, and like this is a lot of it, is like trying to get through the season. I guess my question for you here is this, because there's a lot of talks about trades, about whether like I just think it's funny. I'll let me kind of get through this little theory first. Most years, everyone's like, are they one piece away? And it feels like every year there's like 12 teams that they say that about. Like, yeah, but don't
they envision that piece to be like, you know, Chris Middleton or something, you know, Drew Holiday, like a big piece. Like every team is one big piece away.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, no, yeah, another All-NBA guy that tends to help. I'll say that this year more than any other, I'm like, I don't know that you do, because the bar isn't that high. Like, it's just not. This league is not stacked with all-time great elite teams right now. There will probably be one team that comes out of the season that you're like, oh, they were the best team all along. That's usually what we do with championships. And also, whenever we have this era of parity, that's what happens. We had a high level of parity in 2015, and the Warriors emerged as the dominant force and then became the apex predator, right? That usually happens. That doesn't mean that it will. This may be a one-off year, but I'll just say that, like, I don't feel like it's like, oh no, you need to go get, like, in my opinion, based off of what we've seen from the bench and how these guys are playing, again, health is always the thing, but based off of where they're at now, I feel confident they can get through any series with the guys that they have. I don't think that they're missing a guy.
I mean, right now they look really good. I mean, even Bones is playing well. That bench is starting to figure some things out. I'm not sure. I mean, look, the only player that I think is a major question mark right now is Bones Hyland, who to me is like such a great, you know, upside player. When he's good, I put this on Twitter the other day too. When he's good, the Nuggets win in blowout fashion. I mean, that's the swing. When he plays poorly, they lose games they shouldn't, or they're in games down to the wire. And then when he's neutral, they usually win by like 7 or 8. And over the stretch, if you just look at the last 10 games, Bones Hyland has been a minus 3.2 net rating. And that, first of all, net rating is per 100 possessions. He doesn't play 100 possessions. He plays like 40 possessions, but maybe less than 40, 30 possessions while he's out there. So, that means he's basically an even -1 maybe in the minutes that he's playing per game, which we've talked about this. You can overcome that. And then when he's good, you win big. So to me, he's the one remaining wild card. Can he get up to snuff both defensively and just from a consistency standpoint by the end of the year to where he's a positive impact playoff player? Then I think there's no question about it. And I do think that the Nuggets and Mike Malone, when you mentioned him saying that Zeke Naji is our guy, first of all, it's funny because today at practice, Bones Hyland said he loves playing with DeAndre. He loves, like, he kind of endorsed playing with him. So take that for what it's worth. But to me, one of the things that's important is trying to find consistency for Bones. One of the reasons Denver has such a big on-off swing every single year is that the Nuggets play their starters together more than any other team, which means they play not their starters or no starters or very few starters more than any other team in the NBA. So you're going to have a big swing. And one of the things that's going on is the starters have been mostly consistent. It's either been, the big four with Michael Porter, the big four with Bruce Brown. That's been the only variation. And the bench unit has been different. Every 5 games, it's been a different combination of players. And I do think that part of why Malone says, no, we're going to go with Zeke, and then we'll make adjustments throughout the game as needed, I think is partly just to give this is what to expect, everyone. We're going to look like this. And hopefully that creates stability for Bones in particular.
I'll say this. Based off of the conversations I've had, I feel like there's been a lot, like, if you're going to build a championship roster, you want to build it with guys that you can trust. You don't want to have it be like guys that are unplayable, right? Like, arguably, of the guys that are in the rotation of the top 10, the only guy that you can really say is like not playable is DeAndre. And so the challenge here, I think,
but some games he's extremely playable. I mean, this is why we were talking about this offline. A lot of people are saying they're big. The Nuggets just need a big. They just need one bench big. I don't agree with that. I think DeAndre is the bench big. The thing is you don't need a bench big that often. You just need it sometimes.
Yeah, I mean that's like we said, like it's just when you need it, you really need it. The rest of the time, you don't. I think one of the keys I'm trying to get to here is I think there's a lot of guys that are not happy with playing time. They want to play more.
You think there's a lot?
How can I put this? No, I think that the guys that really want to play more really want to play more. I think is more the thing. I think what's ironic about it is that I think some of the guys that are not of that group are guys that wind up playing quite a bit. Like I think Jeff would probably be okay if it was like, hey, we don't need you tonight. But Malone really trusts him. Like Jeff has been a safety blanket. Like there has been so many before with Malone. I think he's a safety blanket for the team in some respects. I wonder if Joker feels that way about him. I don't know. Maybe I'm completely off there, but there seems to be a comfort there. But I think the young guys in particular, like they want to play more. Like,
the young guys for sure. I mean, but here's the thing. I don't think Zeke Naji. I mean, I think his agent will in the summer if that happens. But I don't think Zeke Naji to me seems to have great attitude. He even has
I don't think it's Zeke. No,
I don't think it's Zeke. And even Christian Brown, who I think would like to play some more. Honestly, I don't think with him it's even him. To be honest, I think you're looking at Bones would clearly like to play more, and I understand it. Just from here, people have to understand something here. Christian Brown does not have superstar upside. I think that whatever happens to him this year is probably not going to affect his money long term because to me, he projects to be a starting caliber defensive specialist, usually a 4th or 5th option. Maybe he's a 6th man, but that money is kind of consistent and people understand that it takes years to get there. Bones Hyland has superstar potential, or at least like there's a reason for him to believe he does. The difference in money between if he plays a lot of minutes, puts up a lot of points, does all of this stuff versus buys into a 18-minute per game role that the Nuggets need him to get is a pretty big outcome. There's a pretty big gap there between like, hey, do what's best for us and let's hope that works. Now, he's only a second-year player. He shouldn't be having to worry about the money just yet. But that's just the nature of the NBA, that he is a guy that if he were on the Orlando Magic and scoring 22 points a game, he's probably going to get $100+ million contract here in 2 years.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think you're probably right about that. Like if he was in Detroit right now, he's putting up huge numbers and they look better because he's one of the only guys that can make a shot there, right? So
and Christian Brown wouldn't necessarily. Like if Christian Brown was there, he'd be on the same trajectory as he is now, where it's like, hey, he's a really good role player.
Yeah, there is this a very famous trainer I heard once say at a seminar about how if you want to get paid, you got to get buckets. Like that's just like and like it really is reality in the NBA. It's fresh. I think we're slowly shifting away from that, where it seems like there's more of a premium on the guys that impact the game and do the things that help you win. But there's still like every year we're going to see guys that put up numbers, not even good efficiency, just like points per game. Those guys get paid. They just do.
But it's like but Bones is also really good. I mean, this is the thing I've been preaching. Like it's hard to play point guard. The runway for point guards is the longest of all development. It takes a really long time. You need reps. He's a great scorer. To me, Jordan Poole just got a $140 million deal.
Yeah.
4 years, $140 million. He's not a polished final product. Like he's still growing into what he's going to be. And I'm just saying that's Bones, I think realistically should want that. And it's hard to try to like accomplish both goals. And I think this is part of where I'm just trying to say I understand how a guy can be a little bit frustrated when he's playing well. You know, you've asked him, he had his moments where he's playing bad, but now he's playing well over these last handful of games, doing what's asked of him, and then you still only get 16 minutes. It's a tough ask. Now, I wish that basketball were more just about winning, and it's like, hey, I'm on a championship team, and if I want, a bigger role, that's for the offseason. Let's address that in the summer, and hey, if that doesn't work, do right by me. But at the same time, I understand why he was playing great in the fourth quarter of that game and then comes out a little bit early, and it was the right move. It's just I'm just trying to say it's a tough pill to swallow. And he's the only player on the team that is in that situation.
This is not wrong. Like you've been right on so many things. Like I tend to be like, Adam's probably right about these things because he's been right about so much. Is there anybody in Denver media that you think is higher on Bones than you? I think you're probably the highest.
What's funny about it is it's not that I'm the highest on him, even with regards to what the team's doing. Like I understand the complications of him and like, and the defense is going to be a tough, something tough or what have you. I just look at it and I go, the things that he does at a really like naturally, the things that are easy to him are some of the toughest things to teach and the rarest. So That's true. Really, really, really valuable. And I also know that he has some of the playmaking chops. And here's the biggest thing I will say. A lot of the Nuggets system, why does he dribble the air out of the ball? This is why I predicted the fan base was going to be a little bit more critical of him this year. A lot of it is by design, and that's the thing that I don't like is I feel like he takes a little bit of criticism for doing the things the Nuggets are asking him to do, and when they don't work out, it's like, why did you do that? If you watch it, actually, the TNT game was a great example of this because TNT, whenever they're on TNT for whatever reason, the coaches come in, you can hear them from the sidelines. They're calling rub. Every single time he's on the court, they're screaming rub, which means guard-to-guard screen and ISO. The Nuggets, every time Bones is on the court, are wanting him to dribble the ball 100 times when trying to score and then play make from there. That's the play they're calling. So when he does it and it works, it looks great. And when he doesn't, it looks, people are like, why is he dribbling the air to the ball? Because that's the play they called. That's the strategy they want.
It's funny that you say that because I've seen so many times when he's called off of screen when a guy's come up to set one and he's waved him off. So like that's where I think I don't dispute what you're suggesting. Like you have a better feel for these things than I do. But that's like part of where I get lost in trying to understand the dynamic. Is Vlatko a playoff player?
I think so. I think I think there's very little question. Okay. He just doesn't. He's a low mistake player. He's versatile. He defends really well, and he's shooting 50%. It's a low volume. I want to see where that normalizes. But right now, he's a reliable. To me, he's reliable in all facets.
Okay, let's take a break. We'll come back and we're going to talk about exactly what the ceiling is for this team and where they can go. We have to answer the essential question, which I have jokingly referred to, and it's a meaningful one of, are they peaking too early? We'll talk about that all more after the break. But first, I've got to tell you about Built Bar. Yeah, if you're looking for a delicious treat, but you don't want all the fat and calories, you got to try Built Bar. We just got through the holidays, and the goal is for most folks is to lose some weight and be healthier. If you're like me and you want to eat healthier, but you don't want to compromise taste, then we got just the thing for you. You got to try Built. With Built, healthy is actually tasty. It's so delicious, you won't even think that they're good for you. Perfect for that New Year's resolution. What makes Built so good? Well, for starters, they're covered in 100% real chocolate. That's right, real chocolate. They come in unbelievable flavors like churro, which is phenomenal, by the way, peanut butter brownie, and coconut almond. We're not sure how Built does it, but these bars taste like a candy bar while maintaining amazing macros. Only 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, and a whopping 17 grams of protein. You don't need to wait around to get a box. For years, we've been talking about ordering your Built bars at Built.com. Now you can get them at your local Walmart or Sam's Club. That's right. Head to your nearest Walmart today, walk to the pharmacy section, and grab yourself a box of Built bars. You can pick up a 4-bar box of cookies and cream, double chocolate, or coconut puffs. If you're close to Sam's Club, run and grab a 13-bar box with our hit flavors brownie batter and churro. You'll thank me later. Built Bar is the best tasting protein bar on the market. Check them out at built.com. We'll be right back on Locked On Nuggets. Back here on Locked On Nuggets, final segment with Adam Mares, welcoming him back to the show. Tomorrow night, the Nuggets face the Los Angeles Lakers, who are on quite a bit of a roll here, so that's a tougher game than people may realize. Should be a tough one, and then we'll be with you all throughout the week. They've got the Suns, I believe, on Wednesday.
This is a big week, man. Another bunch of tough games, and then the Clippers, are going to want revenge on Friday. So, a couple tough ones. Real quick, you during the break, you got me thinking with your question. Here's how I would rank the bench in terms of playoff, like my trust level. Bruce Brown, Jeff Green. I think Vlatko would be 3. And then I would probably go Bones. And then I think there's like those 3 guys. Then there's like a drop to between Bones. He's going to win and lose your games. This is the volatility right now. And then a drop after Bones to where I'd go Brown and Zeke. Just to tell you where I like Zeke, and I think he's done some really good things, but he's not one of the guys that right now I'd say for sure he's going to be a positive impact. And then DeAndre, I think you know what you get out of DeAndre, but just the playoffs, I don't think you play a backup center very often.
You can't play DeAndre versus Chris Paul. You can't play DeAndre versus Steph Curry. You can't play DeAndre versus Luka Doncic. You can't play any situation where you have guards that can punish. Like if you ask, well, who could he play against? There are honestly, I think tomorrow's probably fine. I'm not worried about Dennis Schroeder. I'm not worried about LeBron doesn't punish you off of the switch the same way. Like that, if it's the Lakers, that's probably a series where if you need him, you can probably buy a few minutes with DeAndre. Now that's better than Zeke, but it's like an option to go to if Zeke doesn't work. But there's a lot of them where it's like DeAndre just flat out can't play. All right, let's just start here. I am of 2 mindsets after I walked out of that game on Friday night versus the Cavs, which is one, the not ceiling, but the rocket-like trajectory into outer space and the heavens and beyond all terrestrial restraints that I can see this team going on. And then simultaneously, there is a question that's been asked, which I've said this about Boston. I said this about Utah. I said this about Phoenix the last couple of years. I've said this consistently of the idea of peaking too early.
Yeah.
I will tell you, I personally do not feel that they're peaking too early. And that's going to sound biased if you're somebody outside of the market. The reason is a lot about what I hear from them. This team is not acting like it's invincible post-game. This team is not talking like, yeah, we have a real chance to do it this year. Their message is their message is very much this. It's hard, and we have all seen things go sideways.
Yeah, I like this.
Nikola, his message seems to be very much built around we've had other good teams. Jamal kind of mentioned this. We've had other. I asked Jamal if this is the best team that they've had, and he said,
I know, it's funny, man, that he hesitated so much.
And he hesitated and was talking about how solid the bubble team was. And it's just you don't know if you can count on it. You don't know if it's real. You don't know if you're going to have the opportunity to be the best that you can be, if you're even going to get that chance until you get there. That's the nature of the season. And so these guys really are head down. They are head down, next game, get through it, do the job, put in the work, do it over and over and over and over again. Because that's the job.
To me, it's confidence without the bravado, which I love. Yeah. And it reminds me, somebody in the chat earlier asked if this was reminded of the 2015 Spurs. It's actually the 2014 Spurs. And it does in a couple ways. One, that Spurs team was so incredibly connected. Denver's not there yet, although these last couple games have definitely they've touched those heights in terms of just as the team all on the same page. But remember that team also had to ramp up throughout the year. They peaked in the playoffs, but they started showing signs of it. They just got better and better and better at those things. And I'm hopeful that Denver can continue to do that, because then you gain even more confidence. But number 2, I'll never forget this. I don't remember what game it was, game 1 or 2, or maybe one of the games where they got up so big in the finals, up 20 points in the second quarter on the Heat. And I just remember the timeout, and they walked to the bench, and they all just looked like robots. You would think you're up 20, jumping up and down, high five, this or that. And the Spurs were just, and the thing you were just saying about the appreciation for how hard it is and the appreciation for like it's not over till it's over. Like that Spurs team was so about that. They're just like, yeah, we're up 20. We're in a groove right now, but let's just, like that's what we do. That's what we did what we were supposed to do. Now let's keep doing it. And I do think Denver has a little bit of that going on with them right now, where everybody kind of feels like maybe for the first time since I've been covering them, that they feel like they know what they need to do to win. And they're all doing it. And they're just like, hey, stay in this groove, stay in this focus.
Yeah, and like they know the guys are gonna miss time, and they know that they'll I think there's also an understanding of we won't play this well all the time, and there will be times of adversity, and it's easier. This is why all the veterans are constantly don't get too high or too down, because if you get high and then you suffer that losing streak and you start to get disconnected, it hurts that much more. And I think honestly the Celtics have kind of suffered this a little bit. Boston's all over the place right now.
Yep.
It is get trounced by Oklahoma City. I have it on good authority that they did not take that game seriously on multiple levels. But they were getting up for the Dallas game. So they go out and they stomp Luka and they put in a really A+ performance. They go home and they nearly lost to the Spurs on Sunday, screwing around. Their performances have they're wobbling a little bit, I think, because they got really high off of those early results. You lost the finals, but you come back and you play, and you went through all this turmoil in preseason, but you're playing awesome basketball and you're feeling so good. And then it starts to wobble a little bit.
In a weird way, though, the Celtics rely more heavily on individual brilliance.
It's true.
And I just think Denver, they have Jokic, of course. And to win championships, you're going to need the individual brilliance of Porter and Gordon and Murray. You're going to need those things as well, especially Murray. But I think right now, the thing that's so encouraging about them is they're just a 5-man unit. The different combinations of them right now, the bench is a little different, but all the combinations of the starting group is just such a 5-man unit working in sync, knowing where they're supposed to be and enjoying it. And that's when you get to that level where everybody seems to be enjoying that style of winning, that's when you hit this peak.
Tim Joseph says, how can you even worry about the playoffs now? Bulls were the first seed for a while last year and almost fell to the play-in. The West is really close this year. A bad stretch can drop you a ton.
Of course.
I would agree. Sean Iggy Dragon says, I have PTSD for being a Nuggets fan, so I don't get too optimistic, which is funny. So I think what I'll say to kind of those kind of comments is I will tell you that as somebody that watches the entire league and has to focus on the entire league, Golden State's going to be there at the end.
Yep.
I haven't lost faith in Golden State at all.
Man, they might be there at the beginning.
Yeah, they might be there at the beginning. It's entirely possible. Steph's coming back soon. I think that there's probably a takeoff happening pretty soon.
I agree.
The Clippers for sure, I think, can be there in the beginning because I'm starting to wonder about them.
No, Phoenix, Lakers, Clippers. To me, if you look at the standings, there's a very good chance that's an 8 seed, a 7 or an 8 seed was one of those teams.
And look, they may not be the number 1 seed. The Nuggets may not finish 1. They may not finish 2. I could see them finishing 3rd. But if you ask me, are we going to be talking about the Nuggets and their chances to win the West? Yes. It will not be and also the last couple of years have been and also the Nuggets are really good. But this year it really is and I have to tell you, we wanted them to play better after they were when they were winning, but not playing well. And they did it. They got home. They stopped being on the road every 4 days. They fixed a bunch of stuff. They got way better at how to play together. I look back and I remember about the learning curve for these guys. And I think that the idea was but Jokic makes it so easy. But even then, Bruce Brown and KCP have kind of talked, and Aaron still have talked about. Jamal has mentioned this about the new guys. He's just it does take time. It does even if some things. Who was it? I was talking to Aaron, and Aaron told me in the locker room that some things will click immediately, and you know what you can do there because you guys you're a veteran and you have experience. He's but other things, it does take that repetition of in game. You have to do it. And then you figure out how to do it and and then teams adjust to it and you got to make those adjustments. But I have a hard time containing my confidence in this team right now. I have a hard time as somebody that has historically been let's tone it down a bit. I have a hard time right now.
I agree. They score too easily, man. They've scored easily before they got Jamal and Porter and these guys, and right now they're, like you mentioned, top defense in the NBA. They've played a bunch of top defenses in the NBA over the last 2 weeks. They score on all of them.
You know what I keep thinking too, and I've had this conversation so much. We've been having this conversation since 2017 about this team, and with the idea of the balance of offense and defense. I don't know any season where defense has mattered less than this season. Now, the Nuggets have played pretty good defense overall over the past 2 weeks. But I am telling you across the board that every figure I'm looking at, if you compare it to previous seasons, is just through the roof.
Yeah.
League-wide, everybody. Everybody's going off for 40. Everybody's putting up a 115. Nobody can get a defensive game under 100. Right? Like, Munders are non-existent this season. But they're non-existent for most teams. Yeah. The teams that have been, and I've talked a lot about this on Locked On NBA, the teams that have been dominant defensively, the Heat, the Celtics, the Raptors, all three of those teams are just having a hell of a time trying to get the numbers that they want to put up. It's taken teams like the Cavs that are super big. It's taken Memphis that's built around Jaren Jackson Jr. Size is dictating more of your defense than ever. And if you just ask me in a playoff series that it's, even if you're like, okay, but the Nuggets are going to have to get stops, I'm just like, yeah, but they're going to have to get less because I don't think anyone can slow them down.
Yeah. And also they're getting stops. I mean, they're the number 6 defense over the last 10 games, and they played some good teams over that stretch. So I'm with you. I'm very confident on them. It does remind me of the 6 games or whatever when Aaron Gordon came over, where everything just kind of felt great and exciting. I think the team is probably better now than they were at that moment, but it's the excitement factor. This the way I would describe it is, in those 6 games, the team looked like they believed. And I would say that over the stretch as well. The team looks like they're playing like, hey, we have a mission here. We can do this now. We have the guys. And that's what's so exciting about this group right now.
All right, let's wrap it there. And we'll be back on Tuesday morning after the Lakers game to recap that game. We'll see how that one goes versus a very different team. We'll be back with you for that recap and coverage all throughout the week with Adam Mares back from vacation. Thanks so much for joining us, everybody. Make sure to hit rate, review, and subscribe. We'll see you guys again next time on Locked On Nuggets.